Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to yet another edition of Compliance Scorecard with our good friends at EasyDMARC. Alan, how the hell are you today?
I'm doing awesome, Tim. How are you doing? I couldn't be any better. I'm sitting here in somewhat sunny Florida. A little overcast and rainy today, but I'm right on the Gulf, so we're good to go.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, New Hampshire, the weather is just starting to turn a little bit here. Memorial Day weekend this past weekend, it's kind of rainy but sunny.
Yeah.
But it was weird. I don't know. I'm really looking forward to having like longer, beautiful summer days here. It's just
I get it. The only thing with us is we're starting on Monday. We start hurricane season, so we start hurricane June 1st through the next 6 months. So it's already up to like 88, 90 degrees here, so it's a little warm.
Yeah, we took the kids to Disney once when they were little, and we made the mistake of doing it in August.
Yeah.
Because we're like, oh, it's nice here. It must be nice down there, because we probably didn't know any better. And 112 degrees in the shade and whatever it was. It was like, yeah, I'm never doing that again.
Yeah, 95% humidity.
Yeah, they say it's the humidity, not the heat. Well, it's all of it. I just don't like the heat at all. So, yeah, a little crazy. But hey, you have any conferences coming up?
Yeah, so actually in July 9th, I'm going to be at the ChannelCon conference, the CompTIA ChannelCon in Nashville.
GTIA. It's not CompTIA anymore.
Excuse me. GTIA in Nashville. It's going to be at the Gaylord Opryland Resort Center. So I'm going to be there. And then we're also going to be at the Seven Figure MSP conference next month in Fort Worth. I won't be there, but EasyDMARC will be there. And then right now we've got InfoSec next week up Europe, so we'll be there as well.
Oh, that's fun. Yeah, we'll be at PAX 8 here in the coming weeks, and we will also be at GTIA ChannelCon as well. It's kind of one of my more favorite events. It's a little more laid back. I love the fact that every vendor gets the same size booth, which means every vendor gets the same size thing. And, there's a lot of vendors there, for MSPs that, are new and breaking in or just their first time conference or whatever, right? It's level playing field. Us as a vendor don't have to be intimidated or whatever by the giant, 100-foot booths and $1 million things, because
exactly
it's all level set. And then flip that, like the content that GTIA is putting out is great as well. So we're looking forward to ChannelCon. We're looking forward to PAX 8. July is a little bit of a rough month because, with the holidays, there's not a lot of things going on. And so we kind of take July as a, first week around the holiday, like take some time off around that as well. So, but yeah, why don't we get into it here? Let me do this real quick. Why don't you take a second and say, hello, who are you? Why are you here? All the fun things.
No, absolutely. So for those of you who are not aware, my name is Alan Richards. I'm the MSP growth lead for EasyDMARC. I joined EasyDMARC about a year ago, and we are focused, our division of the market is focused on enabling the MSP community to simply manage DMARC settings. Obviously, we've got Gmail, we've got Outlook, we've got all the major email service providers that are now requiring that your DMARC be enabled, and it's coming very quickly to a reject status, right? So we make that easy for you, manage all your clients. We monitor it for you on an ongoing basis. A lot of stuff that we do, but we also provide a way for you to generate leads through the service as well, which is an added benefit as well. So you can grow your business and enable your DMARC. So that's basically what we do.
Oh, so what I hear is you make DMARC easy?
We do. We make DMARC easy.
That's awesome. So I am, or we, Compliance Scorecard, are an EasyDMARC user. right? And so I like the fact that I get my weekly reports. It tells me like where I'm doing well or not doing well. Obviously, as a compliance company, we want to be as compliant ourselves as possible, right? And so it's interesting that a lot of MSPs, try their best to manage DNS appropriately, but sometimes they don't have full control over it. Sometimes the web people are the people, and they're probably the wrong people. And, having a tool like EasyDMARC to monitor that, to tell you when it's broken, to keep you compliant so that you get better email deliverability, right? And don't become a spammer, or your domain gets hacked, or business compromise email, all those things, right? So
yeah.
I just love being an EasyDMARC partner, and that's why we do these things, our strategic alliance, because we believe in the tools and the people that we work with. And so really excited to kind of talk a little bit today about, we all use the word checklists, and I suppose I should do my own intro as hey, everybody, Tim Golden, founder, CEO of Compliance Scorecard, channel chief, whatever you want to call me, the guy that does all these fun live streams and gets to be in your face a lot. So thank you for letting me come into your living room or your office or your whatever. But yes, Compliance Scorecard, where we help you have that risk conversation with your customer, making it really easy with our scorecards. We're really excited to have our good friend Alan here today from EasyDMARC. And let's just dive into some of these things. And now I know we have a whole outline, we're kind of walking through a bunch of different things, but let's just pause for a minute. We're about 6 months, about halfway into the year of 2025. We've seen a bunch of changes happen. There's a bunch more on the works, as a global industry. Alan, what are some of the things that you have seen new in 2025 or about to be rolled out, not just from our products, but the industry at large?
Well, I think that as we go along, obviously email is still the biggest vector point for email compromise, right? For phishing, for malware is from an email scenario. And last year we saw it with Google and Yahoo, where they rolled out the requirement for the DMARC implementation, and they said it either had to be quarantined or reject. And now, within the past couple months, the biggest thing that we've seen is Microsoft, the biggest fish in the pond, has now required that if you're sending more than 5,000 emails a day, that your email has to be enforced with DMARC on a P reject status, or it's going to go to junk. It's not even going to be, it's going to be totally rejected. So, what we're trying to do with the MSPs out there is help them to understand that their clients, this is a risk for their clients. And when you're talking about billing, email, all the stuff, if they want their invoices to get paid, if they want their promos emails to go out, they've got to have all this stuff in line.
Yeah, it is interesting. You mentioned 5,000 emails a day. I feel like I get 5,000 emails a second.
Yeah.
But that seems like a lot. Like, do people really send that? Well, you have to then take into consideration the entirety of the domain, every person in the domain. We get caught in these email loops where it's like 5,000 people on one email thread and you hit reply 17,000 times, and that stuff adds up fast, right?
Well, yeah, you also have to take a look at your marketing list, because what a lot of people don't understand is it's not just your domain that has to be DMARC compliant. If you're sending out through a promo source, that has to be DMARC compliant. Billing has to be DMARC compliant. Anything that is sending out through your domain, and if you start adding all those up, 5,000 emails is not a large number.
It's not a lot. I mean, our CRM is bigger than that. So all I got to do is send one marketing campaign and I'm done.
Yep.
Now,
absolutely.
All of that said, so, I'm going to talk a little bit about the Verizon breach report, right? And have you seen the 2025 Verizon breach report that's recently come out?
No, I haven't. Yeah.
So there's a lot of interesting tidbits that are in there, right? Incidents, or I hate to use the word breach, but that's the word that they use. So let's just use their words, because as a compliance guy and a security guy, breach means something very specific to me, but I'm going to use their word. But, the interesting component is how much ransomware has increased, right? And how does ransomware happen? Whether it's phishing or email compromise, business compromise, email, whether, any of that kind of stuff, it comes through email. And it's up, and it made up of 44% of the breaches that's happened this past year, right? And, the average payout was like over $115,000. Right. And about 64% of those victims, while they refused to pay, they still lost a lot. Right. Vulnerabilities grew. So long way away of saying is, we know that email is probably one of the most single important factors when it comes to having an incident. Right. Phishing and social engineering and bad links and all that kind of stuff. And that by putting these things in place, making sure your text records, your SPF records, your DMARC records, your DKIM records, and the list goes on. All the things I don't have to think about, because EasyDMARC just makes it easy for me.
Well, Jim, it's really amazing if you think about it, because when I got into the MSP field, probably 20 years ago, MSPs were only having to worry about break fix. They were doing break fix. They were doing hosted exchange. They were doing email filtering, things like that. But all of a sudden, it's changed, and now they have to be security and compliant as experts as well, and that's coming down, because of all the regulatory issues. And I mean, do you find on your line that the MSPs are just like, they're like a deer in the headlights? They don't, what do I do with this compliance thing? How do I do it? I mean, what has been your experience?
Yeah, that's a really great segue. We're going to get into what these checklists and stuff look like. So to recap on, what's new in 2025, having solid and correctly configured email settings, period. Email is one of the still biggest points of entry for compromise. When we look at, in the compliance space, things like CMMC, FTC safeguards, and the list goes on and on and on around. I mean, HIPAA put out some pieces not too long ago that they're getting feedback on to change HIPAA, right? DORA, NIS2, all the mouthful of acronyms are just getting smacked around everywhere. What that means to me, and what that should mean to you as an MSP, is you can't ignore compliance anymore. It's not just a thing that would be cool to have. Now, as that trickles downstream to your end customers, it's being able to have that conversation with your customer like, hey, this is getting worse. And you know what? We're not taking care of it despite what you might think. So you either want to partner with us as your MSP to help you on that compliance and risk journey, or you don't. But the reality is, it ain't going nowhere. Back up 2-3 years, I kept saying compliance is coming. It's coming. Now you're too late. It is already here. It is 2025. And if you don't have some kind of risk program for your MSP first, and then your customers, if you don't have a risk program in place already, you are already behind. Don't worry, Compliance Scorecard can help you with that. Sorry, shameless plug. But that's the reality. Compliance is not going anywhere. I get it. It's big. It's scary. I don't want to get it wrong. Customer won't pay for it. We hear all these objections all the time, right? But it doesn't have to be, right? Look at, rolling out M365 and setting up DNS appropriately. You have a playbook for that, right? You can use tools like EasyDMARC to help you with that, right? You have a playbook to follow for clicking ones and zeros and blinky lights. We love doing that because, hey, I have a step-by-step guide. I'll tell you what, compliance is no different. There are rule books, there are playbooks, they're called NIST and CIS and FTC and HIPAA, and so the list goes on and on and on. There are playbooks that are available, open source, free, whatever. So you don't have to be afraid of compliance. Just like anything, when I ripped out the first hard drive of a computer way back I won't tell you in the 1990s how old I might be, I was terrified. Back in the days of like dip switches and IO and all, like, you probably don't even know what the hell I'm talking about. I was terrified the first computer I took apart, and now it's second nature. You don't have to go at it alone. There's lots of people that can help you. So what's new in 2025? Yeah, you're already too late when it comes to compliance. You should probably start some program internally. Email changes and EasyDMARC. Breaches are still up, all of those things. But I think you kind of alluded a little bit to this, Alan. Like, what are some of the mistakes MSPs are making still? This, and kind of what are the pitfalls that, you're hearing from your MSP community?
Yeah, I mean, so what we hear a lot is that a lot of our MSPs are like, oh, I can do DMARC management on my own. I don't need a managed service, right? And so as an MSP, why would you actually use a managed service like EasyDMARC for your clients? Well, I mean, number one, it's a lot easier if you're doing DMARC on your own, DMARC management on your own. Number one, you're going to have to log into your DNS every time you want to make a change into each individual client. You're going to have to go in there and make each individual TXT record for every sending source. The XML files that DMARC sends back are pretty much unreadable. And how are you going to be alerted to change, right? Those are the three big things that we see. So with EasyDMARC, it's pretty simple as far as being able to manage all of your clients. And we understand where MSPs are coming from and the pains that they have. So, with it being mandatory, we want to be able to make it simple for you guys just to go in and just log in. You can manage all your clients through a single dashboard. We translate those XML reports for you, and then we just manage. We monitor any changes, because sometimes, I know, Tim, you've probably never seen this, but sometimes a client will go in and they'll add a new sending source without telling their MSP. And I don't know if there's, I mean, I wouldn't say that would be, common.
Probably the marketing team, because they went and now signed up for a 5th CRM tool.
Yeah, right. So if you're on reject mode and somebody adds a sending source, none of that email is going to be going out. And as an MSP, how are you notified? And also, if like a sending source could change their code, they can change something on the back end where you were in alignment before, but now your DKIM is out of alignment or your SPF is out of alignment. How are you notified on that? So that's sort of where, I know the MSPs are really hesitant. They've got so much going on, right? And what we realize is things have just got to be simple for them to be able to implement.
So let's walk down a scenario. I'm going to pivot here real quick, because this is literally happening to me right now. So, we use EasyDMARC. It's how we manage our records, at least when it comes to mail records and those components. A couple of other cool features you all have. And I don't want to make this all about EasyDMARC, but I have a use case for you. We switched CRMs. We were on Active Campaign. I got that all set up 2, 3, 5 years, 100 years ago. Great. All emails are going out. They're coming from our domain. Everything's copacetic. We're getting 50, 60, 70, 80% deliverable and open rates, which, by the way, is unheard of. We switched. Yay. Now we're in HubSpot. Everybody loves HubSpot. It's the thing. Yeah, we're getting deliverable, but our open rates are like 1 or 2%.
Yeah.
And as I started to dig into and realize, like, what the hell is going on? I'm like, oh, it's not actually coming. The emails are actually coming from HubSpot domain, not our domain. Which, okay, so then fast forward, they're not coming from us per se. They're, aliased or whatever under the HubSpot domain. Trying to figure out how to make that change so that they come from our domain is not an easy feat. And I think I'm a smart guy. Right. And I started digging into that the other day, and I'm like, this is really challenging. Like, I mean, I'm not dumb, but I suppose if I sat for a focused 45 minutes. That's the hard part. I probably won't be able to fix it, but I know the rest of our emails are getting delivered. I watch our delivery reports. I watch and I look at EasyDMARC. I get our weekly reports from the platform. Like, I can send from my Outlook, no problem, or our team. But once I introduced that CRM and have watched our delivery rates plummet, our open rates plummet, oh, it's because it's using the HubSpot domain. And a lot of MSPs that have customers that have a CRM are probably not configuring that appropriately.
No,
but that's all right, because I'm going to manage all the DNS by myself without a tool, because I'm the MSP and I'm super smart. Okay,
yeah,
not to belittle you all, but that's the reality. I'm just me managing my one damn domain, and it's still a pain in the neck. I couldn't imagine if I had 60 or 70 customers all doing their own thing, maybe managing their own DNS and screwing it up along the way.
And I have a real, I feel for MSPs out there, because they're what they have done. The industry has changed so much over the past 10 years, and they are trying to it's almost like sometimes they're trying to change a tire on an 18-wheeler while it's going down the interstate at 85 miles an hour. So I get it. I understand completely.
Yeah, it's I don't know, what am I trying to say? It's really hard, to be honest with you, to be able to manage, multi-tenant, multi-domain across multiple customers with multiple people in the mix. It just gets squirrely fast. Yeah. I love the I love analogies. Trying to change the tire on an 18-wheeler. I've done that, by the way. I was a mechanic, so y'all know that. And I remember having to teach my daughters how to change a tire on the car, because one of the things when they got their license was you need to know how to change a flat.
Yep.
Not because, manly of it. Like, I want my daughters to be safe and, know how to do some basic, like how to put oil in the car or how to check the oil or any of those kinds of things, right? And being able to do that as an MSP at scale with something that seems so simple as DNS is a challenge.
Yeah.
Is a challenge. Let me pop up and see if we have any great comments. No comments yet there. Those of you that are listening here on LinkedIn Live or any of the other streams, we kind of love to hear some feedback from you. We're going to dive into a little bit deeper conversation now on like process and how to simplify some things, kind of some checklist items, at least from a high level. Alan, why don't you kind of kick us off there a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, so basically when you're looking at email, I think we've talked a little bit about this with email deliverability, but I mean, in case there are people out there that don't really have a clear understanding, and it's not, again, like Tim said, it's not to belittle anybody out there, but there still may be some MSPs out there that don't really get the whole DMARC enforcement thing, right? And what it does is DMARC basically tells your recipient who you're emailing, if the SPF records don't line up, right? And sorry about that. I don't know what I did. I did something.
Going on.
So if your SPF records do not align, right, or if your DKIM records do not align for the recipient, what do you want what do you want to happen to that email, right? And again, SPF, remember, the Center Policy Framework, the DKIM makes sure that the body of the email has not been tampered with. So, and then it has to be set by the major ESPs. It either has to be set to quarantine or reject. Now, if it goes to quarantine, it's going to go to their spam folder. If it goes to reject, that means they're not going to see it at all. And so that's why the monitoring with the SPF and the DKIM records, whether you're using EasyDMARC, whether you're using one of the competitors out there, or whether you're doing it on your own, you've got to be able to manage the DMARC, the SPF, and the DKIM records. And there's three settings. It's none, in DMARC in general, it's none, quarantine, and reject. If you have it set to none, it's just basically doing nothing at that point, right? There's no enforcement on it. So the reject is really the gold standard for DMARC enforcement, is that once you have your SPF and your DKIM records, that's set to reject. And that is the safeguard for the recipient to make sure that they're not going to be getting any business email compromise attacks, phishing attacks from your domain or an alias domain as well.
Right.
Because all of your alias domains should be set for DMARC enforcement as well, so nobody spoofs those domains to your clients.
So I hate being rejected, but I think in this case, it's a good thing.
It is a very good thing.
Right? Because I can imagine, so we have multiple different things, multiple different whatevers. Like we use Enterprise Send Grid for our platform to be able to send emails out for the platform, which is highly important as part of the SaaS product, right? So I had to make sure, the Enterprise Send Grid was allowed to as a safe sender. I had to do a bunch of different components just for us and our one dumb domain to make sure, not dumb, our amazing domain, compliancescorecard.com. I had to do a bunch of different things to make sure that, SendGrid is an allowed sender, right? Because it's baked into our platform. That's what we use, unless you're using M365, whatever we have that option to. But, I had to go through, and now I'm struggling with stupid HubSpot. Yeah, I can say stupid HubSpot. I'm struggling with HubSpot to, kind of get that. So we have our sending domain and migrate away from our old CRM to the new. Like, it's a lot of work. And it's, I don't think I'm a dumb guy, but it can be a little confusing and challenging. And here's another thing that I've been learning along the way, at least when it comes to text records. One stupid little semicolon can blow it all up. One stupid little equals NPA, REA, whatever, all the different acronyms. Because then I'm starting to dig through. I'm like, what the hell do these acronyms mean? Where you're like, NA, whatever. There's a bunch of different ones. I'm sure you know them better than I. And I started digging through them, trying to really, all right, I probably went too far, too deep in trying to analyze what all this shit means, letter by letter, ID by ID, when I could have just been clicking a button in something easy and had my DMARC done.
Yeah, I mean, and that's where we came into play, where you can actually make DNS changes through the platform. So you don't have to log back in. It's just a one click, and you can go into your client and click the reject, and you're done, right? So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So pivoting this a little bit into kind of like the overarching, compliance related things, checklist related things. So proper DNS and email configuration is one major component of compliance stuff.
Yeah.
Right? And then making sure that those settings for DNS and the other components around that are configured appropriately to maintain compliance, right? And so having the ability to monitor that ongoing and tell you when you're out of compliance is a great thing too. But here's something that's missing in the space, and that, we're looking forward to building out together with our good friends at EasyDMARC, and that is, it's great to have a tool, but if you don't have a policy and a procedure and the KPIs to match that, the tool is nothing more than just something that sits in the box in the shed in the garage. But if you don't have a manual that it explains, how do I take the lug nuts off the 18-wheeler? How do I put the new wheel back on? What torque specifications do I torque the lug nuts on? How many square pounds per foot, blah, 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 blah. If I don't have a policy that says, this is why we use a tool like EasyDMARC or whatever, this is why we have this in place to manage our records. This is the how, go to EasyDMARC, click button, move on, whatever, right? Because it's easy. But then the performance indicators around that, how many foot-pounds should I tweak this lug nut? Or is it okay that we're in reject or monitor or none? Is it okay? Is our method or our metric to force rejection. No, well, it is ours, but you get the idea. Like, having a tool is only one part of the job.
Yep.
I can have the biggest Snap-on shop in the world. You can roll your Lamborghini into that shop with every single tool underneath the sun, and Snap-on and Mac, whatever, Milwaukee. Everybody loves Milwaukee. You can have every Milwaukee tool in the world in that building. Hell, you can even have a really smart mechanic. But if the mechanic doesn't have some sort of policy, procedure, and guide to follow when it comes to fixing and replacing a part on that, $5 million Lamborghini, you're in trouble.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've told MSPs for a long time, even in my previous life, is that, email security it's like an onion. You've got multi layers on it, right? You've got, your DMARC protection, you've got DNS protection, you've got email protection, you've got endpoint, network, all of these things that are layered. And so it becomes much easier for MSPs if they have a process, and if they take that process for compliance in email security, cybersecurity, and they implement it across the board with all of their clients. If they're doing that, and they're making sure that all of their clients in their base are compliant, and that they're on the same email security system, it makes it much easier for them to grow their business.
Yeah. So Heather has a really great question. Let me pull that up real quick. So comments, here we go. When it comes to compliance, I should do this in Heather's voice, but I don't know Heather's voice, but it's okay. So when it comes to compliance, where is DMARC becoming mandatory? I know my answer. I'm going to kind of toss you under the bus here. I'm going to give you an opportunity.
Yeah, so basically DMARC is mandatory now across all the major email platforms, right? If you're sending out bulk email, if you're sending out over 5,000 emails a day, DMARC is mandatory. Period. Okay. It has to be. They have to have the SPF records aligned. They have to have the DKIM records aligned, and they have to have the DMARC in place to tell the recipient what to do with that email if it doesn't line up. So if you are a business, if you're sending out invoices, if you're sending out mass mailers, if you want your bills to get paid and your emails to get to your clients, you have to be DMARC compliant.
So I'm going to take it a step further, and I'm going to say CIS Safeguard 5. Right. So there's CIS controls. Now, is CIS mandated? No, but a lot of MSPs follow CIS. If I would look at, say, NIST, right? Y'all know the CMMC, right? There's controls within the CMMC sphere about trustworthy email, right? I'll use that term loosely, right? And being able to look at a bunch of the operational directives and the guidance and everything coming out from CISA, coming out from NIST, coming out from HOA, like coming out from all of these department, entities about trustworthy email. Back up to the top of the hour where we talked about the Verizon breach report, and how it was at 40 some odd % of ransomware, as can be directly correlated to email, business compromise email or more, right? So where is DMARC becoming mandatory? Well, first and foremost, as Alan said, Google and others, you won't be able to send email to them if you're not, period, right? Am I paraphrasing that okay, Alan?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then Microsoft, right? 5,000 or more emails, blah, 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 you won't be able to send email, period. So it's not just, is there a specific compliance framework and regulatory item that says, do this or die? Well, Microsoft and Google kind of said that.
Yeah.
and wherever you are in the spectrum, you're either using Microsoft or Google or some flavor thereof, right? Yahoo, maybe you're using Yahoo or AOL or whatever, but a vast majority of the world are using those two email services. And they said, if you're not doing it, too bad. So do I need a specific law that says you must be DMARC I don't know, Microsoft and Google not delivering my emails is probably good enough.
Yeah.
Now, yes, there are controls in frameworks. Yes, some of those frameworks are legal, attested, CMMC, SOC 2, ISO, and all this goes on and on, that do have requirements specific to the concept of trustworthy email, right? And so, making sure your DKIM records, your SPF records, your DMARC records, and all the list goes on and on and on and on, are part of that trustworthy email component of any compliance framework. Do you want me to pull it? So hopefully, Heather, that answers your question. When it comes to it being mandatory, I think Microsoft and Google saying, too bad, Charlie, makes me feel like it's pretty mandatory.
Yeah.
Like, the next Yahoo, AOL, and who's left at that point? Proton Mail.
Well, the next big thing is for them to, it's sort of like what Microsoft has done, and I'm sure Google will follow soon, is that if you're not, Microsoft has mandated the reject status. Mm-hmm. So I'm sure that Google will be right behind them as well.
Yeah. So, all right. We've talked about what's new. We've talked about some of the, pitfalls that we see, where the MSP doesn't necessarily have the ability to manage the DNS. Maybe it's the web company or the nephew of the next door neighbor's best friend's son twice removed, whatever. Like, we know that there are pitfalls. We know that there are challenges. We know that there are tools to help with that. Mm-hmm. We kind of moved into, it's great to have a tool, but you should probably have a roadmap, a policy, a procedure, and metrics to monitor.
Yep.
And, and that's where our relationship starts to, tie really well into, compliance scorecard into EasyDMARC, is to be able to build the policy, govern the policy, send the policy out, have a procedure, and then tie that all into metrics. And, API fun stuff is coming to monitor all of that so that you are maintaining, say what you do what you say, have a tool to prove it, and then monitor it, right? Those are all of the things that we're trying to, build into compliance scorecard. Let's pivot a little bit, right? Let's talk about, kind of turning these into some kind of revenue stream for an MSP.
No, absolutely.
Alan, you're the growth lead for MSP, so you must have some way of helping them grow their revenue.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, so when MSPs are looking at DMARC, obviously one of the things they're looking at is, how do I generate revenue with this? And what we have found for most MSPs is it's very simple for them to take the DMARC solution and roll it into their security stack. We've already talked about the mandatory part of it, and we've seen MSPs do this in a couple ways. They've gone to each individual client. They've said, look, Mr. Client, this is mandatory. This is why you need it. Here's what I'm going to charge you extra for it. So we need to get this in place. That is a very hard push sometimes, because you're talking to clients that are bakers or shoemakers or, whatever they do, and they have no idea what DMARC is, and they think you're just trying to sell them a shiny bell, right? And what is much easier and what we found more effective for MSPs is to roll it into their cybersecurity stack. They know that it is mandatory. They know that they need it. And so when the clients come up for renewal, they just say, look, here's your renewal. It includes your email deliverability. It includes your DNS protection, all the line items. So they just roll the DNS into that. The other thing which we provide for our MSPs, which gives them the ability to generate revenue, is simply a domain scanner, right? So they can go out and they can look at their list of clients, and they can run a domain scan for each one of those prospects, and it gives them a full printout on why their email is at risk, and it's lit up like a Christmas tree, and it's very explanatory. And they can bring a new client in on DMARC, but then they have the opportunity to upsell them on the rest of their services as well, the main services.
You know what? Let's just do this, right? So hold on. Let me change a couple of things here. Let me go here real quick. Let me go here real quick. I want to do this, and I want to do this, and I want to do that. Yeah. So you were talking. All right, here we go. All right, so full transparency. Yeah, I'm going to use my own personal domain, which I know for a fact is not an EasyDMARC, and I know for a fact I haven't messed around with it long enough to fix all the stuff. But you have this tool, right? So if I go and do timgolden.com, I know it's going to fail because I'm not monitoring that in EasyDMARC. Ouch, right? High risk. I probably need to go get my own shit together and not talk about MSPs getting their stuff together. But if I were to do compliance scorecard, compliancescorecard.com, by the way, it's probably going to tell me, hey, thanks for being a member. Yay, I got a 10 out of 10 because, I am eating my own dog food when it comes to the company. Can I do better at my own personal domain? Yes. But, this is a very simple and easy way for you as an MSP to be able to, which one do I want? Do I want this one, that one, this one? I got to figure out where the hell we were. Not that one. Was it this one, this one, this one? Damn it. There we go. Sorry. It drove you all a little nuts there. So, it's a pretty easy tool for you to just pop their customer's domain in there and be like, hey, you're not doing so great. And
as in the MSP, if they ran it through their platform, it actually gives a 6 or 7 page printout that is very presentable to the end user, and it defines what DKIM is, what SPF is, what DMARC is, and it gives visuals so an everyday business owner can understand what the damage is and how they are allowing the black hats into their email if it's not taken care of.
Right. So if I'm an MSP, I'll put my MSP hat on, and I think, the objections are going to happen. Like, we're not going to teach you how to objection handling. The reality is that there are just things that you have in your stack that are non-negotiable. Managing email is one of them, period.
Yep.
And as part of that managing email component, when we built our packaging at our MSP, back up 5, 6, however many years, while we didn't individually list every single thing, we had a line item that said email management. Now, internally, we knew that meant M365 and all the things that go on M365, DNS and all the things that go on in DNS, right? Which include DKM, SPIF, DMARC, and the list goes on and on and on and on. Filtering and all that fun stuff, right? And on and on and on and on and on. And so we just had a bullet with a brief little sentence that was like, email management. We're going to do all things related to email. I mean, I'm dumbing it down, but you get the idea. And we knew internally that meant I'm managing that DNS. And I'm making sure that there are the right people in the right places to make sure that DNS isn't getting messed up. And I wouldn't leave that to the web team or to the development team or to some other, not us. Because if we're managing the M365 instance, I want full chain up and down, period.
So here's a question. Here's a question for you, Tim. If an MSP is working with a client that is compliant related, right? They're mandated in compliance. And if the MSP, let's say they don't do something or they take a shortcut or whatever, and all of a sudden the client is in violation of regulations or compliance, how does that affect the MSP? What risk does the MSP absorb at that point?
I mean, you've probably seen me hammering this drum for the last couple of months. First and foremost, as an MSP, you own all the risk, period. And unless you start from your master service agreement, statement of work, scope of work, all the way down the chain of this is exactly what I'm responsible for, but more importantly, this is exactly what I am not responsible for, you're going to own that risk. Because your customer, they just take care of that. I have an IT company that just does that for me. when the reality is you might not be. Well, so let's put ourselves in one of these scenarios that happens to me quite frequently. I have a separate entity, Golden Tech. I manage some Microsoft instances and some websites and some things in a different business, friends and family kind of thing, my lawnmower guy, whatever. Actually, I'll pick on my lawnmower guy because that's a really good example. I've been taking care of his website for 15 years, but I don't manage his DNS. And one of his staff member decided to sign up for M365 because they saw a little ad, buy it through GoDaddy, which is where they buy their name. And they just clicked all the buttons and went through the whole GoDaddy thing, and poof, their website was gone. Well, it wasn't gone because it was pointing to my hosting instance. Their email stopped working. And all the things, like they couldn't send invoices, they couldn't get their contact forms, they couldn't get their leads. Everything stopped working because, the office manager was like, oh, look at that. I can fix our email with GoDaddy with one click and $4 a month. Awesome. Let's do that. Because I didn't have control over the DNS or the name or the things. In this particular instance, I don't do that anymore over there. Like, this is my stack and this is what we do. And if you're not in there, you're out. So that's all changed now. But this happened 5 or 6 years ago. And I'm getting the owner of the company texting and calling and hey, we can't get email and our website's down and everything's broken. And what did you break? They didn't break anything. And walked through the root cause and whatnot. So as an MSP, I needed to go through and clearly dictate what is in my scope and what is not in my scope. Because otherwise, the customer assumes you're just taking care of it all. How does this all affect me as an MSP? I could point back to my agreement with that customer and say, listen, you opted out of email and DNS management. Here's the thing. You said no on both of them. No problem. All I'm doing is spinning up a website and putting whatever content you want on there. You opted out of all these other services. So when your staff member went and broke it all, and you're calling me on a Saturday afternoon and I'm ignoring you, not my problem. Flip that. Now I manage all of that for them. Complete control. Now, granted, we have glass accounts and they can still get in and do the things. They don't, but we have all the checks and balances in place. So as an MSP, how does this affect me? Well, if it is not part of my agreement and I don't have explicit conditions and terms and statements of work opting me in or opting me out, the customer is going to assume that it's just our problem. And when business compromise email happens, or somebody signs up for a new CRM, or billing and invoicing emails are getting bounced and non-delivered, and you're not getting payments and checks and those kinds of things, or your customer isn't, you're going to be held accountable.
Yep.
That's it. It's plain and simple. Start at the beginning, have a solid policy, procedure, MSA, scope of work, all those things that clearly define what you're doing and, more importantly, what you are not doing. When it comes to DNS management, in my opinion, the MSP should have that under their own control.
Yeah.
I have a full development team here for Compliance Scorecard. There's 30, there's 7, whatever. There's 30 people. There's a lot of people on that team, way smarter than me in a bunch of different things. None of them have access to DNS. They can write circles around my coding abilities, right? Super smart people can write amazing things. None of them have access to DNS.
I guess that's part of the compliance too, right? Limiting access to who has access to what platforms and stuff like that.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, in any compliance framework, there's some kind of shared responsibility, role-based access control. There's all of those things that exist in a compliance program. But that, taking that down to Joe's Bakery or, Bob's Landscaping, Bob thought it would be cool to get a website 10 years ago. So he went to GoDaddy and he bought a name and he spun up a whatever GoDaddy site. We all know how GoDaddy have had numerous incidents over the years, right? I don't care where you buy your domain name from. You should let your MSP manage that for you. And in your MSP, you should have one or two people that are responsible for monitoring, maintaining, and dealing with DNS and logging in two-factor and checks and balances and all that fun stuff and change management, and the list goes on and on and on and on. And I just think it's part of the standard stack. I'm managing your M365. That comes with DNS. That's my purview. And I've had customers as an MSP pushback. No, our web team is super smart. Yeah, they might be able to write HTML and CSS and, pay-per-click Google stuff. But once you start digging into the intricacies of SPF, DKIM, DMARC, A records, CNAME, throw Cloudflare in the mix, and you're even more screwed. Better off screwed. As we are. So, all right, we're coming to the last 9 minutes here. Alan, I'm going to pull you up on full screen. What I like to do when we end these things is kind of bring it around and have like a key takeaway. So, Alan, as we've talked a lot about the different things today, can you maybe share a minute or two or three about what would be one key takeaway from today's session?
Yeah, I mean, the key takeaway is that even though it is so ubiquitous in where we are, the management of email is key, and it's getting even more key, right, as an MSP. And though it may be easy to overlook because DMARC is a small part of it, it's extremely important in your clients getting email deliverability. How is your email delivered? How is it getting to their inbox? And number one, the other thing is, how can we assist you in generating new business, right? How can you use this one key element of email deliverability and generate new leads for you? And it is a relationship-based system that we want to help, right? That's what we're here for. We want to help. We work with people like Tim with Compliance Scorecard because this all works together, right? Mm-hmm. Keeping email compliant and keeping your DMARC enforced is all part of you being compliant, right? And the more, like Tim said, the more systems that you have in play, the simpler you use it, the more that you're going to have time to generate more revenue and build your business.
Great stuff. Great stuff. So, when I think about, compliance checklists, kind of tying it all back into what do we need to know for 2025? We're halfway through the year. We've had the Verizon breach report put out. If I had to think of a good, solid key takeaway from today's session around checklists and DMARC and what do we need to know, I'd start with, well, I was going to go down the MSA path, but I've been beating that drum too long. So I would probably start with understanding where do you fit in the stack when it comes to email management, right? Does it start at purchasing and managing Microsoft licenses and that's where it stops? Or do you go all the way up and down the chain with managing DNS, managing the records within DNS, looking at the things that are already here, the compliance components, the required components, the Google, the Microsoft reject components? Are you ensuring that you are in that entire stack? And secondly, does your customer know where that line in the sand is and who is actually responsible? Is it you? Is it the web team? Is it the person that manages their GoDaddy instance? Like, having that conversation with your customer with, hey, These things are now required. Your emails won't go through. It's plain and simple. It's easy. We'd like to make sure we're managing XYZ, DNS, whatever. Sure. You can have access to, we're going to put safeguards in place and change management to make sure that things just aren't willy-nilly changed. We're also going to bring the ability to monitor some of that stuff, EasyDMARC, whatever. But we're going to build a policy and a procedure and a tool and a program around making sure you have trustworthy email. Bringing it back to us in the beginning where I talked about trustworthy email. So my biggest key takeaway for today for you as an MSP is if you don't own the stack, then you need to at least make sure your customer knows you don't do that and you are not culpable or responsible or whatever and sign off. Ideally, you would own the email stack, for lack of better terms. Alan, thank you so much for being here. This is really great conversation. Any parting words, any thoughts, anything else we might have missed? I know it went by super fast.
It did. There's a lot of things there. If you look at the EasyDMARC LinkedIn page, we just came out with our DMARC adoption report. There's a lot of good information in there regarding a DMARC adoption across the board, across the industry. Some key takeaways, so I would suggest that. And as an MSP, if you want to start a trial, just go to EasyDMARC.com and let's book some time to talk.
Awesome. Before we bounce, I'm going to just share real quick. Thank you. Let me do this. So for those of you that are unaware, we relaunched our podcast series, MSPThoughtLeadership.com. Next week, we have our good friend Jesse Miller coming on in. And we're going to talk some AI and how to improve your risk register and some cool things that'll be coming out around risk register and artificial large language, all the acronym AI stuff. If you haven't already subscribed to the podcast, you can head on over to MSP Thought Leadership, click on the podcast feeds, and pick on any one of your individual cool Apple, Spotify, all the different places. You can even listen right on the website if you chose to. But yeah, we're excited to launch the series Risk to Revenue, and we hope to see you there next week. Alan, thank you so much for joining us today, and we'll see you on the flip side.
Yeah, Tim, this has been great. And when I see you in New Orleans, I'll buy you a refreshing beverage of your choice.
Coffee. I don't drink. Coffee it is. Or maybe I think if it's New Orleans, it's probably sweet tea.
Yeah, in Nashville. Yeah, they'll have some sweet tea. Yeah.
Or beignets. Is that what they're called? Beignets.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what they're called, but yeah, some beignet or whatever. But I will be there. I will see you in Nashua. I was just at that same hotel a couple of months ago. It's massive.
It is huge.
And I know exactly where all the coffee spots are and what time they close.
There you go.
Awesome. All right, Alan, thank you so much. Have a great rest of your week. We'll see you physically soon.
All right. Thanks, Tim.
Yeah.
Subscribe now.